I'm Ike Williams.
Gotcha.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Cassidy Byer.
Okay.
I'm the senior advisor for the Democratic
All right.
Caucus. I was
Yep.
just seeing who's all here. I see you
Yeah,
watching.
awesome.
All
Do you
I'll bring it home.
He's been mad for weeks. I must say. I think they want people back here to look like. Hello. Hello and welcome everyone to our quick press conference today. And our topic today is our State Superintendent of Ed, Ellen Weaver's partnership with the PragerU University for social studies materials. So I'm Sherry East and I am the high school science teacher from Rock Hill, but I'm currently serving as the SCA president. And I have with me today some other speakers. Those are going to be Dr. Janelle Rivers from the League of Women Voters, Courtney Thomas with the ACLU of South Carolina, and Representative Jermaine Johnson, who serves here in Columbia but also is on our education committee. So we'll go ahead and get started. And I would say our statement from the SCA is that we were very disturbed to see that materials such as PragerU were allowed in our schools and that they are encouraged to be taught by leadership in South Carolina. We find these materials to be very biased and they are not showing the truth and the true history or science of South Carolina, and we find them to be controversial. And in one hand, leadership says, oh, we can't have anything controversial because we banned African American studies. However, this is far more controversial material and we are encouraged to use that. We would like to see the vetting process, the same vetting process that's used to vet books, textbooks, go through a rigorous vetting process that involves parents, teachers, sometimes students. And we do not believe that PragerU went through any of that vetting process and would urge folks to contact the superintendent's office about how these materials came to be in South Carolina and if at all any taxpayer dollars were used to purchase them. So that is all that I have to say on the matter. Again, we want to teach the truth. Teachers want to teach factual history from vetted materials from experts, and we have a process in place and we want to make sure we use that from now on. And I will pass it on to Dr. Janelle Rivers, who is here with the League of Women Voters.
Thank you. Besides representing the League of Women Voters, I am a retired educator who has taught in South Carolina schools and worked as an administrator in South Carolina school districts and at the State Department of Education. I am very concerned that our students be taught an accurate view of history, and I think all of the scholars in this area who are concerned about our students would want to be careful about what materials we allow into our schools. The vetting process is careful, and it even includes a public comment period, and we're concerned that those things might not have been those procedures might not have been followed. It's important that we teach our students about society that they live in and not return to the kinds of biases that we saw 50 or 100 years ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rivers. And now we'll hear from Courtney Thomas with the ACLU of South Carolina.
Good morning, y'all. Once again, South Carolina is making national news, but for the wrong reasons. As a South Carolinian, I'm embarrassed. We need to see this moment for what it is, yet another attack on public education and the civil liberties that have been set forth in the Constitution. I think Superintendent Weaver needs a civics lesson. Here's a quick reminder of what the First Amendment actually says. The Establishment Clause prohibits the government from establishing a religion. Let's look at some of the video titles from PragerU. Here's one: do not refuse God's name. If there is no God, then murder isn't wrong. What are Judeo-Christian values? Now, even by suggesting that our public schools use these videos, Superintendent Weaver is purposefully recommending Christian values be instilled in our public schools. And that is blatantly antithetical to the First Amendment of the Constitution. What about our Muslim students? What about our Jewish students or the non-theist students? These overtly Christian videos have no place in our public education system. And on just a personal note, y'all, I've been Black my whole entire life, and I have never seen anything as blatantly offensive as some of these PragerU videos that feature a fictionalized Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, this cartoon character they made, because the real abolitionists would have never said this, it said, "I'm certainly not okay with slavery, but the founding fathers made a compromise to achieve something great." That is so offensive. That is so offensive. If Superintendent Weaver understood the dark history of our state, she would have never even recommended something so offensive be put into our schools. They have the abolitionist Frederick Douglass saying that slavery was a necessary compromise. How embarrassing. Superintendent Weaver should not allow these videos to be in our schools, and we really should reinvest in public education, because clearly we missed the mark somewhere if this is what our superintendent is recommending for our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will hear from Representative Jermaine Johnson.
Good morning. Here we are another day in South Carolina. Here we are another day that South Carolina has gotten it wrong. Just a few short weeks ago, we stood together in these halls, and we stood together as Black, we stood together as white, Republican, Democrat, women and men, and we talked about the history and the future monument of Robert Smalls that will be featured right here on these State House grounds. And we talked about what that means to all South Carolinians, how great that history will be. But now here today, I stand here appalled, disgusted, and concerned about what the future is going to hold for this monument. In a few short years, we're going to see this monument. But also, in a few short years, we're going to hear the rhetoric behind from whence Robert Smalls came. What will that rhetoric be? Will that be that he commandeered a Confederate ship and sailed out of the harbor, came back, ran for office, won, and did these great things as a former enslaved human being? Or will we hear that the Confederates allowed him to leave the harbor and allowed him to run for office and allowed him to do the great things that he did? Will we hear that this was a necessary compromise for Robert Smalls to create the Republican Party here in South Carolina? Will we hear that it was a necessary evil for him to do the things that he did? What will we hear in the future? Based on this current agreement that our superintendent of education has with PragerU, we cannot say for certain if that won't be true. But what I'm saying today, and I want you to hear exactly what I'm saying, we will not stand for this. Today we are standing here united, we are standing together, and we are standing for truth. Lies are of the past in this state. We will stand for truth, we will embrace our history, and we will do what we have to do to make sure our young people have the best education possible. What we have saw recently was a unilateral decision made by our Department of Education. This is a decision that must be immediately terminated. We will not allow this to go forward like this. I'm here today to announce that we will be submitting a FOIA request. We will demand all of the information that came from this partnership. We will demand how this vetting process went through. We will demand what money was spent on this partnership. We continue to hear that there was no money spent, that no money was given nor received. But there clearly was tax dollars spent on this partnership, because if you're meeting with PragerU on office hours, that is tax dollars. Any email that's sent, that's tax dollars. All of these emails, all of this correspondence, those are tax dollars. I do not approve of my tax dollars going to the whitewashing of history. We will not allow this. We will not stand for this. And we will make sure that tomorrow is better than yesterday. And when we do that, when we stand together, when we stand united, we will say hate has no bearing here in South Carolina. Hate will not be here, and the whitewashing of history will not stand here in this state. It is not welcome on these grounds. It is not welcome in our schools. And we do not want indoctrination. This is the claim that everybody is making. Do not indoctrinate our children. Well, I'm saying today, I'm demanding today, stop indoctrinating our children. I watched these videos, and when I watched these videos, I was literally sick to my stomach. And I was trying not to vomit as I was watching these videos. When I watched one of Christopher Columbus saying that, isn't it better to be a slave than to die? Well, maybe they missed the history lesson when we talked about slaves jumping over ships because they'd rather be dead than to live their life as a slave. Maybe they missed the history lesson where those mothers of these enslaved children had to make the decision to kill themselves and to kill their children because they didn't want to live a life as a slave. Maybe they missed those history lessons about these great individuals who fought against the oppression of everybody across this country. And in this state that arguably played the biggest role in slavery and chattel slavery in this country, how dare you create this partnership? I'm asking you today, I'm demanding you today to stand up, to terminate this partnership, and I'm demanding those Republicans who claim to be my friends, those ones that stand in the back chamber with me and laugh and talk about my family and ask me about how I'm doing. I'm demanding you today to stop being silent, to stand up with us, because right is right and wrong is wrong. And we will not stand for this. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for coming out today. And I guess if we have any questions from the press, or if you guys want to do individual interviews, do we have any questions for the group?
I got one.
Okay.
So we saw with the Board of Education, setting this review policies earlier this year, and that was looking at the curriculum. Obviously, we got reviews of standards in different disciplines coming up over the next few years. I guess we've seen the extent of the administrative power that the Department of Education actually does have. I'm sort of wondering, as far as legislative interventions, are you guys hands tied? What can the legislature actually do?
So I've actually inquired about this already. Last year when we saw the implementation of one of those other crazy policies that Ellen Weaver decided to do, and we talked specifically about this, about making sure that we looked at any way to change some of these policies so that she does not have the ability to make these unilateral decisions. Because I have reached out to members of the Education Committee, and they have also said that they had no idea that this was happening, that this partnership was going to be taking place. and they said that this is a concerning situation. So this is something that we need to make sure that we address, because we cannot allow this to continue to happen. We cannot allow somebody to act on behalf of all South Carolinians across this state, and we cannot allow somebody with that much power to dictate the futures of millions of children across the state.
Yeah, so what would it take to get more oversight over the Department of Education and the legislature? We're talking like constitutional amendment, is it a statute type deal?
It's going to be some statutes, and this will be because one of the statutes allows them to submit a policy review and to change some policies. And if us as a General Assembly, if we don't take action in a certain amount of days, then that policy essentially goes into effect. This is a policy that we are going to be looking at. This is a policy that I have told members of the General Assembly that I wanted to look at and change, and I believe that's what we'll be looking at this upcoming session.
Bipartisan interest?
There is bipartisan interest, yes.
I think the other thing is we do have in place is the Education Oversight Committee. The Education Oversight Committee was formed years ago to kind of watchdog over the State Department of Education. And in years past, we've seen those two bodies don't get along, especially, I'll just say, with Molly and Ellen. When they were both in charge, we saw some friction back and forth, but one body is supposed to kind of check on the other body. We also have the State Board of Education. We also have the legislative bodies. Those things aren't working together. They are not aware of the things that are coming out of the State Department of Ed, and that is concerning. We used to also be asked to be on committees. Hey, we're going to have a committee to review a cell phone policy, a committee to review African American studies, and we would involve teachers, people who actually teach these subjects every day. You would call them and say, hey, what do you think about these ideas? That's not happening right now. With my associate, with the SCA Association or others, we're not being brought to the table to discuss anything. It's just top down, here's the new policy, here's what we're doing. And that really does go against the whole everybody be at the table, let's all talk about this and see. So, and when you talk to the state board, especially with the African American Studies class, they had no idea that had been cut. And I think they were hoping that nobody knew that had been cut and just to slide it through. And then, it got out to the media that kind of thing has happened. And that's a problem, is when you have people making decisions in a silo and not involving the other agencies that are actually part of education. You have two committees, one in the Senate, one in the House, Education Oversight, and the State Board. Those folks are not being included in any of these processes either.
You both talked about being surprised by some of these policies coming up. What would an adequate notice process have looked like for the issue at hand, the PragerU videos or any of these other issues?
Well, I think when we're going to do new standards, like they put them out a year ahead of time, and they say, okay, we're going to review social studies standards, we're going to form a committee, and it includes parents, all the stakeholders are brought together, and you work on those a year at a time. Then they go up for approval. Then, there is a process in place. Same thing with textbooks. A textbook adoption committee, you work on that a year out. So we know, for me, biology textbooks are going to be reintroduced, like new books. The book companies send you all their samples. You get together teams at your school. You review the materials. Then you vote on a vote. Imagine that we vote on which materials that we would like to use, and then we send that up to the State Department. Then the State Department would issue a list of books that a district could buy. So approved, vetted materials by people who teach the material at hand. So that every year there's another subject that's up for review. Just did English, social studies is up now, science will be, so periodically you review materials, update them along with the materials that a district can purchase. From what I can tell, PragerU did not follow that process at all. No one I can't imagine a teacher in this state that would say, oh yay, I needed this for my classroom, this is what I've been asking for. Those are not things that we have asked for nor need in our classroom.
What would have been fantastic is the day that Superintendent Weaver decided that this was a serious consideration for partnership. It would have been great for her to come present this in front of the Education Committee to allow us to discuss these sorts of things, because she does not operate unilaterally. At least she should not operate in such. She should not operate in silo, and there are more players in this state that have to do with education than just one individual. We have SCETV here. Did they go talk to them about creating some videos? Did they talk to the people who are right here on the ground about doing these things? What type of opportunities were given to the people of this state to produce educational videos? See, myself alone, I had to teach Superintendent Weaver about who Sarah Mae Fleming was. Myself. This is a civil rights hero. And I had to take it upon myself to teach Superintendent Weaver, who a historical figure, who a civil rights hero was in this state. Is that somebody we want leading education in this state who does not know the history of her own state? We cannot allow that to continue to happen.
Have you spoken to Superintendent Weaver recently?
Not since.
Gotcha. When was that?
That when I told her that was last year.
Gotcha.
Yep.
You talked about some of your colleagues, whether they were Democrats or Republican, and you asked them to stand by you in this decision. Has any Republicans reached out with concerns about this? Like, have you heard from any other lawmakers, specifically Republicans, who don't like this decision?
I have not heard from any in a formal way to say that they're standing against any of this stuff. They're just being silent. And that's what I'm calling out right now, is the silence is deafening. And I cannot allow the silence to continue on. You know, don't be my friend in private, be my friend in public. You know, and let's really talk about these things, because it's not just hurting my children, it's hurting your children. When your children don't know the accurate depiction of history, when your children don't have an accurate and adequate education, it's hurting you all as well. And we need to make sure that that is a known fact across the state.
You suggested there was some bipartisan interest in having a better process for this. Where specifically do you see there being a place to start on a bipartisan process?
Well, I think the first thing is agreeing on the fact that this is an inaccurate history. Once we can stand together and agree on the fact that this is not an accurate portrayal of what actually happened. I mean, the simple fact that they're saying that now African Americans were never considered 3/5 of the human. We all know that. That's not controversial information. You know, and once we can all agree on the fact that this history in which they're trying to portray to individuals in this state is inaccurate, is wrong, if we can agree to that, that is a great starting place, that we can have some sort of an agreement as to knowing again that this is wrong.
I remember with the book review protocols, seemed like the Republicans in the House slow walked doing anything about that or intervening there. I remember Jeff Bradley took a little bit of time to convene the committee, and then when Celeste Davis led that committee, not a lot really happened there. Policy went into effect without legislative intervention, essentially. Have you gotten commitments from them to try and do something in the session this year?
I've spoken to a couple of them about these policy reviews, and they've agreed to at least sit down and look at these policies with me. I can be quite convincing sometimes. So, I believe that we'll get somewhere. And if not, it'll just be a loud session coming up.
Any other questions? One-on-one interviews left? Okay. All right. Thank y'all very much.